Have you ever felt like something was off, but chose to ignore it? Have you ever trusted someone out of compassion, only to realize, too late, that danger was already far too close? Today, these aren't legends. These aren't made-up tales meant to scare you. These are true stories, first-hand accounts from people who came face to face with fear and lived to tell it. From strangers who weren't what they seemed, to situations that felt harmless, until escape was nearly impossible. Welcome to Red Tea Spillman, the channel where the most unsettling stories are given a voice. Put on your headphones, turn off the lights, and get ready, because what you're about to hear could happen to anyone, even you. She asked me for help, but something didn't fit. What happened next left me speechless. This happened a few days ago from when I'm writing today. Where I live we have honestly a lot of parks, but as two teenage girls going to hang out with guys me and my friends obviously picked the biggest one where there's more to do and less people around. For some context, I'll just say this park is down the street from a few halfway houses and work releases for recently released criminals, and a lot of the time the ones who get the days out and don't have anywhere to go end up at this park just to have some time away. So more likely than not, when me and my friends go to hang out or do things teenagers shouldn't, there's already a few tweakers and sketchy people there that we have to watch out for. This day in particular, the guys we were with were boring us more than usual, so we were just sitting on the sidewalk talking and halfway listening to them when a girl walked up to us. While I am not naive or stupid, especially in this park, and especially where I live, I am a girl, and I won't turn away from a young girl who is crying, upset, missing her shoes and phone. The girl I'm going to avoid saying her name, and a lot of the names in this story, asked me if she could use my phone to make a call. I of course had the thought that this girl might run away with my phone, but again I'd rather help if she actually needed it than not. So I offer her my phone, and she holds it for a few minutes before beginning to cry again because she can't seem to remember anyone's number. I tell her it's okay, and she begins to break down and tell us how she doesn't seem to remember what happened to her last night. She tells us she was with a man and went out for drinks to just have fun when all of a sudden he got very angry, and she can't remember anything that happened after that, just being found in a parking lot and being taken to the local hospital, where she was treated for a head injury and very obvious bruises all over her body. She said they refused to give her a rape kit, and then they dropped her off at this park because she didn't remember how to get home. She kept apologizing and saying she didn't mean to ruin our day, but at this point me and my friend no longer care about the guys we're with, just about getting this girl help. I offer to call 911, and she shares concern of how police won't care because she's a woman of color, and I can understand that being one myself. We got her blankets and food and whatever she needed and promised we would take her to the hospital instead of calling an ambulance, mostly because I knew she didn't want to deal with police again or get into another ambulance right away. We said we would lobby for her and stay with her the entire time, but she didn't love the idea, and I could tell she was getting agitated and aggressive towards us. This was the first red flag. When my friend left to go get her car from across the park, she shared with me she was scared they would put her back into the Pechwasich ward, which I didn't know the story and couldn't promise they wouldn't. I could only promise that we would go with her and stay as much as we were allowed. But she kept crying and asking us to take her to a local store. So we, not wanting to upset her more and make it worse, decided to take her. The store was only a few miles away from the park we were at, so it was no big deal. But the whole ride the girl kept digging in her bag, and that's when I first realized I felt a little uneasy about the situation. She didn't seem to take her hand out of the bag the whole 7-minute ride, and until we got there she seemed to be staring at me and talking to herself. I didn't think much of it because she had gone through a traumatic experience, and I wasn't going to minimize this. On arrival to the store, she instructs us to take her to the back of the store where two men are waiting. She gets out of the car and runs towards the men, crying and breaking down, but the man stands still, not making any moves to comfort her or show any empathy I thought would be normal in this situation. We got out of the car to go and explain the situation, and I have never seen someone care so little about someone they apparently know. This man was gripping her wrists and not even looking at her. This was another red flag. At this point, I already know that something isn't right, and this man is not going to give this girl any help. When my friend finished explaining the situation, the man starts to say that they were going to take care of the situation, and if we wanted we could come with. While we did say we were going to stay, I didn't see the point anymore, and I didn't want to go with this man, and I think that was obvious to my friend. My friend said we could follow in our car if they needed someone to explain to the hospital, but the man insists we all take his car, which is a smaller car and not big enough to fit all of us, which my friends would be. He gives the girl a look, and she starts walking back towards us, mentioning how we said we would stay with her, and she's not actually crying anymore, just making the face like she is. And when we kept saying we could go with in our car, the girl reached for my friend and started getting aggressive and yelling at her. She's holding my friend's arm at this point and not letting her go. At this point, I already know that something isn't right, and this man is not going to give this girl any help. When my friend finished explaining the situation, the man starts to say that they were going to take care of the situation, and if we wanted we could come with. While we did say we were going to stay, I didn't see the point anymore, and I didn't want to go with this man, and I think that was obvious to my friend. My friend said we could follow in our car if they needed someone to explain to the hospital, but the man insists we all take his car, which is a smaller car and not big enough to fit all of us, which my friends would be. He gives the girl a look, and she starts walking back towards us, mentioning how we said we would stay with her, and she's not actually crying anymore, just making the face like she is. And when we kept saying we could go with in our car, the girl reached for my friend and started getting aggressive and yelling at her. She's holding my friend's arm at this point and not letting her go. I start trying to get her to let go of my friend's arm, who is obviously freaking out a little, and this girl is just yelling and screaming in her face. The man starts saying to me how is he supposed to believe that we weren't a part of it, and we probably hurt the girl and we're just bringing her back now and we needed to go with him. He grabs my arm and starts trying to pull me towards the car without making a scene, and even though I was scared, I'm not a person to freeze under pressure, so I start pulling back trying to get away from this man. But I'm not a very strong teenager, and this man is definitely going to get me into the car, but before he could, my friend pushes the girl's arm off of her and starts to scream. The kind of scream that only comes from a teenage girl and the kind that gets people to look. The man drops my arm and pushes me away and drags the girl from the park into his car before driving off and leaving us standing in the parking lot. At this point, we're freaking out and get into the car. We don't know what to do at this point, and stupidly am still worried about the girl in the park because I don't think my mind really wrapped around the fact that she was trying to get us to get into the car with that man. We called 911 and explained the whole situation from the start, even the beginning story of the girl, and they said they would get back to us with some information. We've gotten a few calls from the police in the past few days, and the summary of the story that we got from them was that the women we had tried to help had been at the hospital the night before, but not for what she said. She was there because she was found having mental health problems, which was common for her, as well as being brought in for drug abuse. The man in parking lot, however, was not her boyfriend or her family member. They still don't know who he was to her, just that he had been charged with aggravated kidnapping on multiple occasions. So crying girl in the park and man in the parking lot. Let's not meet again. I was trapped on a bus with a crazy driver. What happened next almost killed me. This story happened to me in 2022, when I was around 24 years old. At the time, I was studying in Paris and renting a room in the house of the mom of my boyfriend at the time, in a city that was more than an hour away from Paris but 20 minutes from Versailles, another important city in France. It was in winter, during a school break I think, and I was going out in Paris to see a longtime internet friend for the first time. She turned out to be a very toxic and problematic person whom I'm not in contact with anymore, but the story is not about her. I must say that I have a rather petite frame because of an eating disorder I was dealing with ever since I was a child, and I've always looked much younger than my age. Even these days I need to show my ID when I want to buy alcohol. On the day of my encounter with my friend, I was dressed casually with a skirt. Our encounter went very well, but since I lived far away and planning to go to my boyfriend's house later, I had to leave before midnight because the public transportation would become scarce after 10 p.m. and I had around 2 hours of transit to get there. Unfortunately, I didn't leave early enough, so I managed to get a train until Versailles, but would have to wait almost an hour to get a bus to go to the nearest city for my boyfriend's house, where he would then pick me up with his car. While I was waiting near the train station, I noticed a group of bus drivers who were smoking and talking to each other. I approached them to ask which one of them was going to drive the bus to insert the name of the city closest to my boyfriend's house, and one of them, a small man with gray hair, who was probably in his late 40s, early 50s, told me that it was him. He noticed my skirt and said that I must be freezing, so he offered me to go heat myself in the bus and wait there until the time of the departure. I gladly accepted, as I was indeed freezing, and while he was walking me to the bus, which was parked in a very dark corner with no lights, he got very close to me and started to act very familiar with me, asking me about where I live and where I was going to and such. I was feeling uneasy and uncomfortable, but I was raised to be polite, and I've always been a people pleaser, so I answered all his questions with as little details as possible until we reached the bus. He opened the door for me, and while all my instincts were screaming me to not go in that bus, I ignored them and got in anyway. I sat at the front of the bus, where there was a bit of light, but mind you, I am black, and even in the dark it would have been very difficult for anyone to see me. Beside from the other bus drivers who saw me leave with the driver, no one knew I was in that bus. Anyway, the second I got in the bus, things got even weirder. He threw his lit cigarette away and got in the bus with me as well, all while telling me a bunch of anecdotes about the bus, about how the bus was actually designed to transport the French football team, and how there was a huge table and even bathroom at the back of the bus, and that I should come in the back of the bus with him to see. He suggested me twice to come in the back of the bus where there were absolutely no light, and this scared me even more, so I texted my boyfriend, "Might no come tonight. Weird bus driver. Call me ASAP," while ignoring the driver rambling. He then came back to the front of the bus and stayed in the corridor, blocking my way. He talked about random things I don't remember, and all the time his eyes were fixated on me, especially on my phone that was in my hand, and my knees/thighs. All the time I was praying for my boyfriend to see my message and call me, and when he finally did, I breathed a sigh of relief. The driver must have seen the face of my boyfriend on the screen of my phone, because he took a step back and told me that he was going to smoke another cigarette outside. I answered my phone and told my boyfriend everything that was going on while looking out the window to keep an eye on the bus driver. When he was far enough, I ran to get out of the bus, only to discover in shock and horror that he had locked the door. I was trapped in that bus, and no one knew where I was except my boyfriend, the creepy bus driver, and the other bus drivers who saw me leave with him. Still on the phone with my boyfriend, I went back to where I was previously sitting and saw through the window that the creepy bus driver was coming back. When he saw me on the phone, he left and locked the bus again. He did this circus back and forth a total of 3 times, locking the bus behind him every time. But the last time he stayed near the bus, so I hung up with my boyfriend and decided to text him instead. At some point, I sat on another seat to keep an eye on the creepy bus driver, and through the window I saw and heard an elderly woman who asked him if his bus was going to city nearest to my boyfriend's house, and he deliberately lied to her, telling her that it would be another bus. At this point, I was freaking out, frantically texting my boyfriend that I was going to die, that the bus driver would do terrible things to me, then kill me and throw my body away. It was at this moment that the bus driver went back in the bus and locked the door again. We were supposed to leave in less than 10 minutes, and suddenly something finally snapped in my brain. I got up, trying to maintain a calm appearance, and lied to him about how I need to go back to the train station to go to the bathroom. He told me that there were bathrooms in the bus. Then I lied again, saying that I needed some snacks from the vending machine. He hesitated and finally accepted to let me go, but before he did so, he pretended twice that the button to open the doors wasn't working, and at this point I didn't care about hiding my distress anymore. I told him that if he couldn't open the door, I'd pick the emergency hammer to break the door, and suddenly the button was working again. I bolted out of the bus and took the deepest breath of cold, fresh winter air I've ever took. I've never been in prison, but I imagine what it feels like to be released from prison. I then ran up to the train station, hid behind a vending machine, and when I finally felt safe, I bursted in tears. I called my boyfriend back, and he told me that he called his sister who lived in Versailles to that her boyfriend would come and pick me. While I was trying to calm myself, guess who I saw coming in the train station? The creepy bus driver. He was acting like he was looking for something. Or rather, someone, and that was likely me. I hold my breath and waited for him to leave, and then cry some more because I realized at that moment that I was his prey and I was right about his bad intentions. Finally, the boyfriend of my boyfriend's sister came and took me back to where I live, and I couldn't sleep that night or the following days. My insomnia worsened. I made a signaling to the bus company, but since he wasn't a usual driver for them, nothing was done, and I didn't even receive an answer. I am very grateful for everyone who helped me that night, and I know it has been said before, but let me say it again as a reminder. Trust your guts. Trust your instincts. They're never wrong. Also, FXCK being polite with creeps that make you feel uncomfortable/unsafe/uneasy. Thank you for your time and attention. Stay safe, everyone, and have a nice life. I told my attacker the best place to attack me. I was 11 years old, an age when the world still feels mostly safe, when the worst thing you can imagine is failing a test or losing your recess for misbehaving. It was an ordinary afternoon. The sun was slowly sinking, casting long warm shadows across the sidewalk. I was walking home alone from school, just like I had done so many times before. Around 4 p.m. The neighborhood was quiet. A few houses slept silently along the street, indifferent. There were a couple of alleyways nearby, narrow, empty, and forgettable. No one was around. No one that mattered. Except for him. I noticed him walking a few steps behind me. A guy, maybe 19 years old, wearing a black hoodie that seemed to swallow the light. He approached calmly, showing no rush, no nervousness. "Excuse me," he said, in a voice I'll never forget. "Is there an alley around here?" I was 11. I didn't think anything of it. I didn't see danger. Just a young guy who might have been lost, looking for a shortcut or trying to find a place. So, like the naive child I was, I pointed to the nearest alley. The quietest one. The easiest one. Then I kept walking, even jogging a little. Completely unaware that in that simple gesture, I had just chosen the stage for my own horror story. 10 seconds later, the world stopped being kind. I felt a sharp, sudden pain on the back of my head. My body jerked forward, and before I could understand what was happening, I was being dragged, like a broken toy, limp and helpless. Even then, in that strange moment, I remember thinking, this has to be a joke. But it wasn't. The alley was narrow, flanked by old wooden fences and weather-worn stone pillars. The air felt thicker there, like even the atmosphere knew something terrible was about to happen. I was shaking, not just from fear, but from disbelief. I sobbed quietly, the kind of crying that escapes when your body doesn't know what else to do. I hoped, desperately, that someone might hear, that someone might come. But no one did. He didn't say much. He didn't have to. He shoved me against the fence with a force that erased any remaining doubt. This wasn't a joke. This wasn't a mistake. This was real. He grabbed my head with both hands. His skin was cold, rough. He pushed the back of my skull against one of the stone pillars, steadying it, and without looking me in the eye, without showing an ounce of emotion, he whispered a short, chilling command. "Close your eyes." And in that moment, I knew. Fear turned into something far worse. Pure, paralyzing terror. There was no way out. No one to stop it. I wasn't going to wake up from this. I closed my eyes. But instinct took over. I raised my hands and shielded the back of my head. My only defense. Then he tried. He slammed my head forward into the stone, trying to knock me out. He must have thought it would work like in the movies. One hit, and I'd just go limp. But that's not how it works. My hands absorbed the blow. It hurt, but I stayed conscious. That must have thrown him off. He hesitated. I felt it. He looked around. The alley wasn't as isolated as he thought. At the far end, it opened into a shared communal space. Too risky, too exposed. And then, he made a decision. He let go. He walked away. Just like that. As if it had never happened. I stood there for a few seconds, frozen. My breathing was frantic, shallow. My heartbeat thundered in my ears like war drums. I didn't understand what had just happened, but one thing was clear. I had to get out of there. I ran. I didn't look back. I didn't think. My legs moved on their own, driven by something primal. Survival. I passed the houses, crossed the streets, and finally, after what felt like an eternity, I reached my home. When I opened the door, reality crashed down on me like a wave. I collapsed, shaking, crying, trying to speak but barely managing broken words. My family surrounded me, held me, tried to understand. The police were called. They came quickly and asked questions. So many questions. I told them everything I could. His face, his voice, his cold hands, and the crushing guilt of having shown him exactly where to take me. The following days were a blur. I barely slept. I woke up to his voice echoing in my head. "Close your eyes." Every shadow looked like him. Every sudden noise made my stomach drop. And then, we got news. They caught him. He had tried it again. This time, with another boy. But this time, the boy's father was nearby, watching, alert. He saw the man just before he could act. The father ran straight at him, tackled him, and pinned him to the ground. Sat on him until the police arrived. There was no escape. His face, that same face that calmly asked me about an alley, appeared on local news. His eyes were empty, not angry, not sad, just void, hollow. What he wanted to do, what he planned to do, was clear to everyone. He didn't want my wallet. He didn't want my phone. He didn't want anything material. He wanted to hurt me. Maybe worse. I was his rehearsal, his test run. And somehow, through a strange mix of instinct and sheer luck, I survived. But I still think about it. What if I hadn't covered my head? What if he hadn't hesitated? What if the alley had been more secluded? What if no one had stopped him the next time? Because I told him where to do it. I chose the stage for my own attack. And that's something I still carry with me. Sometimes, the scariest things aren't ghosts or monsters, but people. The ones right next to you, smiling, while hiding something you'd never expect. So stay safe, trust your gut, and don't let your guard down, even in the places that feel the safest. And hey, if this video made you look over your shoulder or double check under your bed, you know what to do. Like, subscribe, and hit that bell. Or you might be the next story we tell. Just kidding. Or am I?